Hey, everybody, I'm responding to this headline that Michael David Smith, who has never written anything good about Jameis Winston, and wrote he's with the Michael Forio's ProFootballTalk.com. And I have to address this. Jameis Winston said, I'm a championship starting QB, but I stayed because I love New Orleans. And that's true. But he also stayed because he's not done rehabbing. Jameis Winston is a championship quarterback in the right NFL offense, which he wasn't in during his tenure with the Bucks, either with Dirk Cutter or Bruce Arians as head coach. And in his entire career, he's only been in once, and that was Sean Payton's offense, where he threw for 14 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Now, to show you how racism is, and it is, he can do well in that offense, but you have people out there who will not acknowledge it. And if he were white, they would, and everybody knows it. But instead of saying, hey, look, we shouldn't behave that way, they continue to behave that way. Okay? Here's a number of facts. Jameis Winston was drafted because of his arm. The Buccaneers ownership wanted him to throw touchdown passes. There are people in the NFL who don't like what they see as the dink and dunk of Bill Walsh, which proves they really don't understand the Bill Walsh offense, which is why I continue to call it the Bill Walsh offense and not the West Coast offense. There is a vast difference. The Bill Walsh offense asks you to pay attention to footwork and timing. That's number one and paramount. Jameis Winston has never played in a timing offense like Bill Walsh's. That's why John Gruden had said on numerous occasions that he would love to coach Jameis Winston. Anyone who understands and loves technical football knows that Winston has the proper tools to run the offense. And what I mean by proper tools, I mean mind. He understands how to diagnose defenses, to call the right audibles, to suggest the right plays, or even give him room to run plays on his own out of a repertoire. But a coach has to focus on him. To do that, the Buccaneers, if you take a look at what Todd Monken put out in his playbook, or Bruce Arians in his, they had, we have 5 steps, but the receiver timing was never proper. It was never defined. And so you look at playbook and you can see that for example, a 3-step drop doesn't call for the same pattern of 6 yards to the tight end as the 5-yard drop, all right? If you're going to do the 6 yards to the tight end, go back 3 steps and use that. But Bruce Arians' offense has the 5-step drop and the 3-step drop for the same pattern. It's little things like that that make the difference between completions and interceptions. Why? Because the ball in the Bruce Arians offense is constantly thrown off time. That was another problem with the Todd Monken offense. Todd Monken's offense didn't understand how to use movement. I know this because I questioned Coach Monken about it on Twitter, and I gave him, in the form of giving him a friendly idea, which he said, hey, thank you for the idea. Because better offense means a better quarterback, all right? And what is consistently missing from those who think they understand football is, I'm just being honest, is that Jameis Winston understands how to get people lined up right. Name me the last time that Jameis Winston's offenses were called for consistently for false starts or for someone lined up the wrong way. You don't have to worry about that when Jameis Winston is running your offense. You had that problem, for example, with Andy Dalton a number of times, and he's supposedly a veteran. But Jameis is so smooth at what he does that people who are inclined to think negatively about it overlook that. We're also in an era where there's a lot of badly designed passing. Terrible. Now, 5830 blamed the emergence of the too high safety look, but that's not the problem because for anybody who understands and loves the Bill Walsh offense, okay? For anyone who understands and loves the Bill Walsh offense, hey, Kenneth Salter says, let's get Chucky back and bring back Jameis. Great idea. But for anybody who understands the Bill Walsh offense and who's watched it over the years, both with the Niners and at Stanford as I have, and then watched David Shaw borrow and, well, not borrow, but apply it the way that it should be applied, you know that Bill Walsh offenses can eat a too high safety look alive. How? Using the formation to spread out the defense, first of all, and therefore the coverage, and then have the tight end run that famous Bill Walsh pattern, which looks like it's going to start out as an out pattern, and then the tight end curls right back to the middle, taking advantage of the middle open. You don't see anyone else do that, and yet it's out there for anyone else to copy. Bruce Arians didn't do it, and if you look at his playbook, he'll say, okay, throw here on a tight end seam. This is where things don't make any sense. He'll have you throwing a tight end seam if the middle of the field is closed. So basically, he's serving you right up to throw a seam pass into a free safety that can pick it off. Makes no sense whatsoever. But hey, if the middle field, this is really what, all right. But then, what's the option route he has? A crossing pattern. It makes no sense whatsoever, the way he's designed his plays. And yet, what makes even less sense is that Bruce Arians did not number the progression. Go 1, 2, and 3, all right? And he always had Jameis throwing the kind of flat pattern that a linebacker can simply come out, outside linebacker, and ride, and is in a perfect position to pick off. Why? Because of the angle. There is no play that has the standard, some people call this a drain, quarterback drops back, right? Halfback is here and he just does this. Bruce Arians has the halfback going to the hunters, going right to the linebackers in here. And so it's no wonder that Jameis Winston threw a pick six. Arians was serving them up. He's got bad timing, bad play design, and yet he blames everything on the quarterback, okay? Quarterback. Kenneth says, yes, West Coast I say Bill Walsh whichever happened to Jerry Rice slants. That was Bill Walsh. Now, what's the difference between the Bill Walsh offense and the West Coast offense? Easy. The West Coast offense has been modified to pay more attention to the run. And that's where you had Mike Shanahan use it. It was modified. Steve Mariucci as well. But classic Bill Walsh offense is designed to throw the pass, and it uses the pass as other people use the run. I consider, no offense to my friend Steve Mariucci or anybody else, the West Coast offense a watered-down version of the Bill Walsh offense. There is a giant difference. But intellectually, we have just come down. We don't talk about passing game techniques as much as people play Madden or anything else, but it's lost. It is completely lost. And so in this environment where media is constantly blaming the quarterback, and there seems to be this idea that a team drafts a quarterback, my pleasure. That's not a problem. And I think I should do a video on the difference between the Bill Walsh offense and the West Coast offense. There's a giant difference, all right? Giant-sized. And if you want the perfect paper to read about this, go to Controlling the Football with a Passing Game, Bill Walsh's paper written in 1978 before the American Football Coaches Association. The basics are there. The fundamentals are there. All you have to do is follow them. A lot of coaches don't follow them. Bill Walsh complained about this. He complained about coaches that were in love with formations, but not footwork. And they thought that they were actually building a great passing game. And we have a lot of that today. We have coaches that install pretty cool formations, but hey, all right, the one exception to that is the person who runs the closest thing to a true Bill Walsh offense than anyone, and that's Andy Reid. Andy Reid understands the basic philosophy. He was really brought up in more of a West Coast approach, but he honed and refined his system so that it's a pass friendly system. Okay. Whereas arguably Mike Shanahan did not do that. I'm not saying that Mike Shanahan went entirely off the reservation of the Bill Walsh offense basics, but in focusing on the run and zone blocking, he, I think, simplified an approach that originally had multiple blocking. And Ken says I should do that. I will do that. I will definitely do that. But Shanahan really, in emphasizing zone blocking, really, I think, caused a lot of, I'll just be honest, dumbing down in the league. And it's passed to the media where people just talk about zone blocking, but they don't understand how to recognize zone blocking versus man blocking or trap blocking, which I love. I love, and this is should be sacrilege for a Raider fan to admit this, but I love the Pittsburgh Steelers trap game in the 70s and 80s. It was a thing of beauty. And it's something that is really a lost art even today. The assumption is that you have somebody that's 300 pounds and therefore can't run. Well, hey, how many offensive linemen today in the league have we seen that basically belie that statement? Quite a few. Okay. So, in closing, again, Michael David Smith is just wrong. Nothing against him as a person. And if I'll have to say this, it's nothing personal, only business, okay? He says, what kind of offense would you say McDaniels is running? There's actually a name for it. It's called Perkins Earnhardt. And the difference is that first, it pays attention to a modular way of thinking. In other words, instead of calling out, let me give you an example. Instead of red, right, 29, Z out, flare control, all right? It would be something like, um, uh, instead of calling it red, it would be a funny name or like basic, right, dagger or something like that. The point is you have combinations of receivers in formations and you're calling out that structure, okay? As opposed to saying, what's the formation red, right? Or if it's red, right, slot right, right? See, I notice I called red, right, tight end, red, right here. Excuse me, actually be red, right, slot left because the tight end is over here and the slot is on the opposite side with the split and the flanker. Or it'd be red, left, slot right, right? But in Perkins Earnhardt, they call that out as one whole concept. Differences like that. Now, in terms of the timing, they do a great job, the Perkins Earnhardt system run properly of spacing. That's why I'm really disappointed with what Josh McDaniels put on the field with the Raiders. And I have to believe that what the Patriots are doing is more because of the insistence of Bill Belichick in having a timed passing offense that properly coached and properly ran. That's the only explanation I come up with. That said, a lot of the Patriots' passes were not of the I'm going to complete this pass in spite of close coverage, like the slant, for example. You didn't see the Patriots running the Bill Walsh slant. And so you can says you're an encyclopedia, but no, I'm just a fan. I'm a guy who loves techniques. I code for my websites. I went to school to be an economic planner. Anyway, I'm just my head. And I really hated football because I thought too many of folks that looked like me were going in it. And I thought it was racist until I happened upon a book called The NFL's Encyclopedic History of Pro Football after I met Otis Sistrunk, who was a friend of my mom. This goes all the way back to 1975. And I thought, well, gee, if he's going to be visiting, I should be able to talk to him about something because he didn't want to interested in Star Trek or physics or anything that I was into, all right? And so I found this book, and the back of it, it talked about how Tom Landry brought engineering principles to bear on his approach to football, specifically feedback and control theory. I read that. I did a lot of studying about it. And I was hooked as much as I could do in the non-internet age, right? It's easier today. But even then, there's still a lot of crap out there in terms of information. And yeah, you're right. I should contribute to an improvement in that area. But it gives me a comfort when I'm designing a play. And I started doing this way back in high school at Skyline. My first play I ever designed was for the Skyline Titans against Fremont. This was 1978. They went for 36 yards and a touchdown. That was the first play I ever designed. I have never designed a play that didn't work. And it was to the point where when John Gruden came back, who I had met when I worked for Elihu Harris, Gruden, had said, I need plays. This was in 2018. So I put together a little playbook for him, okay? He says, do you think many quarterback coaches have gotten away from footwork? Yeah, that's a great question. There is way too much emphasis on patterns, okay? And the young coaches that come up, like Dave Rangoon with the Falcons, they're known for patterns, but they're not known for mating offensive line blocking to patterns and timing, okay? So they're just known for patterns. Anyone can draw. Anyone, if you know what you're doing, can draw a pattern. But even then, I contend that the patterns they draw don't do wide receivers any service, because watch the receivers and how they roll into a pattern. I talked to Josh Norman about this when he was with Carolina and Winston's with the Bucks, and he told me, this is when Dirk Carter was coaching, that he told me that the Buccaneers' patterns were predictable. And this is a man who'd been picking off the Bucks, with some frequency, or at least stopping their passes. That means you need to change how your receivers run patterns. So if you're going to ask them to run an out, go up, run 2 steps as if you're going to run a post, and then back to the sideline. If you're going to do the in pattern, switch it around to be the opposite, okay? And make absolutely certain that you're using the formation to give the receiver space. So if you're going to run out pattern, 15 yards, why not put everybody else on the other side of the field like a 4x1, right? I can go on and on and on. So in closing, Jameis Winston in the right offense is a championship caliber quarterback. He proved it with the Saints under Sean Payton, but his season was cut short, as Michael Davis Smith seems to have forgotten, because of an illegal horse collar tackle by Devin White, which I argue looked like a bounty hunt. It really did. It looked like a bounty hunt. And Bruce Arians did very little to cover up that possibility. He was very derisive of Jameis coming over to the Saints. But look, they cut him for Tom Brady, and sure, they got their Super Bowl championship, but it was literally one and done. Because once everybody zeroed in on what he was doing, it was pretty much lights out. All right? And, he was getting to the point where he was getting battered once they figured out what they were doing. And they didn't understand, from a standpoint of innovation, how to get out of it. All right? And so they got what they got. The Saints put Winston in a deeper passing game, saying dropping back deep, the timing was off, everything was just terrible. I thought they were actually trying to get him hurt, because they brought Andy Dalton in and ran shorter patterns. I mean, come on. If you know football strategy, if you love it, if you draw your own plays, if you test them out, if you coach other people to run them, as I did even back in college, we were doing like flag football, and I was drawing up plays and trying experiments and everything. Look, football is football, okay? And if you know the basics of it, you can figure out how to innovate outside of that. But I firmly object to the idea that the emergence or the reemergence of the too high look, okay, is the reason why NFL offense is bad. And in fact, it does say here in this headline from 538 that I'm talking about right here. It reads, NFL offense is dead, but it's unlikely too high coverage that is the guilty party. Okay, and so yeah, they're right. And they talked about how scoring was at its lowest levels. All right, but my point is, and their explanation is that that because that quarterbacks are throwing deep less, and my argument is not so much that quarterbacks are throwing deep less, it's how they're taught to throw. Because in the Bill Walsh offense, Sure, there's the alert, the takeoff, right? But but everyone needs to study the Mike Martz offense too, because Mike Martz did a masterful job of installing seam passes. And when the Rams, when he was the head coach, excuse me, played against the um, the Patriots, they lost. Uh, Martz basically took what is the Texas concept and he replicated it 5 different ways in the offense. That was a thing of beauty game plan. I just made a tape of it. And I just kept watching it over and over again because I thought it was a masterful adoption of this Texas concept. Okay. And what is the Texas concept? In its base form, it's in the tight end here going here, all right? The halfback or fullback here coming out, going out a little bit and then going behind him like that. Not exactly a circle, but more inside angle route, and then throwing it, okay? The Saints run that under Pee Wee Parker, but that's the only variation of Texas. Martz had a bunch of them. He took that concept, if you will, or as Tom Green would say, that concept, and he broke it out where you could adopt the slot receivers in it, but you should have a third wide receiver over here to basically assure that the slot person is going to be open when they run the Texas style there. You can do it. There's a number of different variations. Martz did it 5 different ways in that football game, and Kurt Warner hit every single one of them. That you put Jameis Winston in that kind of offense, what I thought the Saints were going to do with Sean Payton when they brought Martz by, he would sail. So I'm saying that the offense that Winston can run the best, the one that is designed to assure the certainty of the open receiver, hasn't been put him, okay? And yeah, that's true. Football is based on Army tactics. And something else too. I've said this before, I said it, and I'll say it again. There are 2 basic differences in passing game design today. There's passing games that tell you to figure out which receiver is open. Then there are passing games that tell you which receiver they want to be open. Vast difference. Bill Walsh is the latter. All right? Tom Landry had the latter, okay? Bruce Arians had the former. So did Don Coryell. You see a pattern here, okay? So which is better from a time standpoint? You want to design the certainty of the open receiver. That's what you want to do. 1, 2, 3. All right? Bruce Arians didn't have that. And then someone says, well, someone used the term check down in Bruce Arians' offense. Bruce Arians' offense does not have a check down because there's no progression. None. It was absolutely ridiculous. So there's a lot of bad passing game design, bad thinking, and the media has no idea what it is going on, unfortunately. And so overall, intellectually, we're not at the highest point we need to be. All right. Thanks, everybody. Now, take your idea. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnowblog.com. That ends this broadcast.